All right, everybody, welcome back to the #1 television show in the history of the world. I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart and The Lonesome Crown, all three books published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today I'm going to be reviewing Louis L'Amour, The Lonesome Gods. Came out in 1983. It was one of the later books that Louis L'Amour wrote. I mean, he wrote books from the 1950s up until the mid-1980s. And so this is one of his later books. Let's talk about the cover first. Because you know I like graphic design and cover illustration. Here we have a nice illustration by Gregory Manches, who does a lot of illustrations. He's done a lot of science fiction illustrations, a lot of fantasy illustrations, a lot of the Louis L'Amour covers, at least the new release. This is one of the newer versions of Louis L'Amour paperbacks. I didn't like the previous cover, so when this one came out, I got it. Anyway, I like it. Now, this is a bigger book for Louis L'Amour. It's 450 pages. This is probably, and not only that, but it was his #1, I think it's his #1 bestseller of all time. It spent, like half a year on the New York Times bestseller list when it came out. It was just one of his, he's only done about 3 or 4 big epic Western novels. Most of his stuff, well, I've got all of his stuff over here. My magnificent and wonderful Louis L'Amour collection of mass market paperbacks is all right there. And as you can see, this one is a little bigger than most. Most of them are small, about 150 to 250 pages long. This is one of his rare epic westerns, and he wanted it to be like massively epic. He told his son this is going to be like just a huge like 1,000 page novel. It's going to span a length of time from like the 1850 to 1950. It's going to span like 100 years of time of this one person's life. It just never really he never really dialed it up to be that big. It actually spanned a young boy's life, but not as extensively as Louis L'Amour wanted it. That being said, it still became like his hugest selling novel. And for good reason. It's a really good book, and I don't know if it would have turned out like he'd really wanted it to be that big, if it would have, because this is a pretty good book, and its themes basically are this. Now, Louis L'Amour lived in Southern California most of his life. He was an adventurer. If you ever read his biography, he adventured all over the world as a young man, but his favorite place to return to was Southern California. Now, and this was back in the 1920s and 1930s, back when Los Angeles wasn't really the big, huge, bustling city that it is now. It was more of like just an old West town. It still had a lot of the Spanish flavor, and it was a mix of a lot of people. And then it started to become this oasis, like this getaway place for all the dreamers in America, like everybody that was a creative person, everybody that just wanted to get rich, be creative. It was just like the California dream started about that time when Louis L'Amour settled there. And he saw Los Angeles grow from literally a Wild West town to just the major city it was back when he passed away in the late 1980s. And so he got to see all that, and he wanted to write a story about the early parts of Los Angeles when people were first settling it in the late 1880s. And so the theme of this is about dreamers coming to California to settle, and what they sort of their journey to California, and once they got there, what they had to deal with once they got there. And we see it through the eyes of a young man named Johannes. I think that's how you say the name, Johhannes. Ennes. So Johannes, we see him, and he is on this wagon train with his father, and his father is sort of sickly. But they're on this wagon train. They're headed from out of New Mexico through Arizona into Southern California. And so a good portion of the book is taken up with this adventure through this wagon train and a lot of the cast of characters that are along this wagon train with them and all of the hardships that they meet, all of the stuff that they have to go through. It's very interesting. It reminded me a lot of Lonesome Dove, which Lonesome Gods, Lonesome Dove. My book, Lonesome Crown. If any of you have noticed, one of my favorite books, if not my favorite book in the world, is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry, a big epic western. I actually named Lonesome Crown in honor of Lonesome Dove. Now I'm thinking that Larry McMurtry named Lonesome Dove in honor of Lonesome Gods. So I think that we've got a progression here. Because a lot of the themes and a lot of the set pieces and a lot of sort of what happens in the Lonesome Gods is you can see those same themes play out in Lonesome Dove. So if you liked Lonesome Dove and you want more of I'd say a PG rated version of Lonesome Dove, Lonesome Gods would be your thing. We've got Johannes, his sickly father. Not only are they traveling to fulfill their dreams in Southern California, they're also being chased by bad guys. They're in this cast of characters. We've got Miss Nesselrode, who's this beautiful sort of entrepreneur. She's like a really cutthroat businesswoman with like a real shady past, and so she's there causing different drama to happen. And then we've got Megan, the young love interest to our young boy Johannes, and of course there has to be a love triangle, which is deadly. All the love triangles in a Louis L'Amour book end in a shootout, as you would expect. It's the Wild West. Don Isidore, he is sort of our protagonist. He is sort of our bad guy. That's sort of, he's got reasons to seek vengeance upon, I just won't tell, I'll just say, let's just say that Johannes' father, his sickly father, has made enemies in his life. He seems to be an honorable man, but he's being chased by a lot of enemies. Anyway, so that's kind of the basis of this epic western. A lot of it takes place in this wagon train, and then once we reach our destination in Southern California, more drama crops up, and it's one of the more plot-driven books that Louis L'Amour wrote. He was given more time, and one of the things that is just great about this, we didn't even talk about the map. But this is kind of just one of the more beautifully written books that Louis L'Amour put out, because it was he gave himself more space. He gave him, these 90, he wrote 100 novels, 95 of them are just about 200 pages, and there's only about 5 or 6 of them that he gave himself some space to really sort of let his prose sort of breathe in and out a little bit, and because those shorter books, whereas the prose in those is beautiful still, it's even more beautiful in this. I like this quite a bit. I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. I really quite enjoyed it. I read it as a kid, remembered nothing about it. It was a joy to reread, and there you have it.